The phone began vibrating on the bedside table at exactly 2:17 a.m., a violent, trembling sound that sliced through the dark like a warning. His mother jolted awake, heart pounding, breath frozen in her chest as though some unseen force had shaken her from a dream on purpose. The screen glowed, lighting the room in an eerie blue, and for a moment she hesitated. Something felt wrong. Terribly, terribly wrong. The air felt heavier. The walls felt closer. Even the silence felt alive, as if the night itself was holding its breath. When she finally picked up the phone and opened the message, her hands trembled so violently she almost dropped it. One single text. One line. One sentence that crawled under her skin like ice. "Mom, I'm sorry. Some of the money. It's dirty. I was manipulated. I don't know how to fix it." Her breath stopped. The world stopped. For a long, paralyzing moment, she couldn't feel her fingers, her feet, or the floor beneath her. It felt as if the room tilted. Slowly, silently, like the universe had just shifted off its axis. Something inside her chest broke open, a fear so enormous she could taste it like metal on her tongue. She wanted to scream his name. She wanted to call him. She wanted to run to him. But all she could do was stare at the message, blinking through tears that blurred the letters but not the horror they carried. The text felt like a whisper from a collapsing world. A final confession or a final cry for help. As she clutched the phone to her chest, she felt a dread she could not explain. It wasn't just the words. It was the feeling behind them. Heaviness. Desperation. A trembling truth he had held inside for far too long. And in that moment she knew with a chilling certainty, that something terrible had already happened. The message spread through her heart like wildfire, and despite every part of her wanting to deny it, she understood it wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't drama. It was a warning, a heartbreak, a truth he had been too afraid to speak aloud. And it was the last message he would ever send. She stared at the phone again, rereading the sentence as if reading it enough times would reveal more. As if the words might rearrange themselves into something less horrifying. But they didn't. They stayed the same. Quiet. Broken. Final. The money was dirty. He had been manipulated. He didn't know how to fix it. The weight of those words crushed her more than any physical blow could. Because Yu Menglong was not the kind of person who used words carelessly. He was gentle, careful, thoughtful to a fault. He apologized even when he wasn't wrong. He worried about disappointing people even when he had done nothing but shine. For him to write something like this, it meant the world inside him had been shaking long before the message ever reached her phone. And that was the thought that haunted her. The realization that her son had been drowning quietly, silently, while smiling for cameras, waving at fans, and pretending everything was fine. She collapsed to her knees on the cold floor, the phone pressed against her face as she sobbed. Not because of what she understood, but because of everything she didn't. What had he meant by dirty money? Who had manipulated him? Why hadn't he told her sooner? Why had he been so afraid? And the worst question of all, why had he believed he had no way out? Days later, the text would become the center of one of the most emotionally charged investigations the industry had ever seen. Experts would analyze every word. Fans would argue over its meaning. The public would craft theories, each more chilling than the last. But none of them would ever capture the way his mother felt in that room, at 2:17 a.m., when the world changed forever. She didn't care about scandals. She didn't care about rumors. She didn't care about the noise outside. All she cared about was the voice inside that message. Fragile, trembling, exhausted. A voice crying for help. A voice trapped. A voice she had not heard in time. As the days moved forward, the message transformed from private heartbreak to public mystery. People began to whisper about the pressure he had been under. Contracts, endorsements, expectations he never asked for but bore with grace until the weight cracked through his smile. Friends mentioned how he had seemed more tired lately, how his laugh felt thinner, how his eyes sometimes wandered off as if replaying thoughts he couldn't escape. No one realized that behind his calm persona was a battle he fought alone. The more the message circulated, the more questions erupted. But questions alone couldn't undo the reality of what had already been lost. His mother replayed their last conversation over and over, searching for clues, anything that hinted at the fear he had carried. She found nothing, because he had been too kind to burden her, too gentle to worry her, too sensitive to admit he was breaking. And yet the message proved he was. He had typed the truth only when he felt cornered, only when the walls closed in, only when the silence inside him became too heavy to hold. The words, "they used me," echoed endlessly across the internet. Theories grew like vines. Contract disputes, forced partnerships, misleading deals, manipulation from people he trusted. Every possibility felt both too dramatic and not dramatic enough. His mother watched the discussions unfold, but none of them mattered to her. The only thing she cared about was that he had been hurting in a way he couldn't bear to show. His message changed him in the eyes of the world, not into someone flawed but someone human. Someone who loved too deeply, cared too much, tried too hard to please everyone at the cost of himself. He became a symbol, not of scandal, not of guilt, but of vulnerability. Fans saw the message as a cry for help, and the more they replayed his interviews, his smiles, his quiet pauses, the more they realized he had been sending signals all along. Subtle, small, almost invisible cracks in a facade he worked tirelessly to hold together. Those who knew him best confirmed it. He was easily overwhelmed. He took blame for things he didn't do. He apologized when others should have. He gave himself away piece by piece without asking for anything back. And someone somewhere had used that goodness against him. That was the part his mother couldn't forgive. Not the message, not the fear, but the fact that someone made her gentle son feel like he had ruined something. Someone made him believe he had failed. Someone convinced him he was responsible for a mistake that was never his. His legacy, however, refused to be defined by the darkness that consumed him. Fans lit candles, shared memories, revisited his roles. They spoke about how his characters healed them, how his smile comforted them, how his sincerity reached through screens and touched lives far beyond his own. His mother watched these tributes with trembling hands, realizing that her son had never truly belonged to her alone. He belonged to the hearts he softened, the souls he comforted, the people he unknowingly held together. The message he left behind was not the ending of his story. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one that demanded the world look deeper, be kinder, and understand that even the brightest lights can flicker quietly before going out. And so, his final text transformed into something larger than pain. It became a reminder, a warning, a legacy of compassion, because in those final trembling words, he revealed a truth too many people hide. The house felt colder in the days after the message arrived, as if Yu Menglong's words had seeped into the walls, staining the air with something invisible and suffocating. His mother kept the phone with her everywhere she went, not out of superstition, but because she couldn't bear to be separated from the last piece of him that spoke directly to her. Sometimes she opened the message just to look at the timestamp, searching for signs she might have missed. Hints she could have interpreted sooner, warnings she could have acted on. She replayed the scene of that night again and again, the vibrating phone, the glow of the screen, the weight of the words. Each time, the memory felt sharper, like a blade pressing deeper into her chest. She wished she had called him immediately. She wished she had gone to him. She wished she had known how much he was drowning. The truth was cruel. She didn't know because he never let her see him break. As the message circulated quietly through the industry, whispers began to grow. People who had worked with him started coming forward with fragments. Not accusations but observations. A makeup artist remembered how his hands trembled slightly during an interview shoot. A driver said there were nights you sat silently in the back seat staring out the window without blinking, as if something outside was calling to him. An assistant mentioned how he sometimes ran his fingers through his hair in the same pattern, a nervous habit he had only when overwhelmed. None of these moments seemed alarming on their own. But together they painted a picture that chilled everyone who heard it. He had been afraid. Silently, privately, deeply afraid. His mother clung to every detail. She wanted to understand the world her son had been navigating behind the scenes, a world he had shielded her from with practiced smiles and gentle nods. She realized painfully that she had only seen the bright parts of his success, the cheers, the applause, the interviews, but not the shadows behind them. The entertainment industry had always felt like a distant galaxy to her, glittering from afar but unreachable. Now, it felt like a place that had swallowed her son whole. As days turned into weeks, investigators began gathering statements, reviewing contracts, tracing financial trails. They spoke to managers, agency staff, brand representatives. His mother listened to every update with a sinking heart, hoping for clarity but fearing what that clarity might cost. One investigator, after reading the message repeatedly, offered a possibility that made her breath hitch. "He may not have meant dirty in a literal sense," the investigator said gently. "He might have meant something that made him feel morally uncomfortable, something he was pressured into, something he believed reflected poorly on him." His mother closed her eyes. "That made sense. You had always been fiercely moral. Even as a child, he cried when he thought he had done something wrong, even if it was something small. He once returned a toy he accidentally took home from kindergarten, tears streaming down his cheeks because he didn't want to be a thief. That was who he was. Sensitive, honest, burdened easily by guilt. If someone had convinced him that he was responsible for something unethical, even falsely, he would have internalized it completely. And that realization broke her all over again. Meanwhile, the internet buzzed with theories. Fans combed through old videos, analyzing his expressions. Some claimed he looked troubled months earlier. Others argued he hid it too well for anyone to notice. People shared screenshots of interviews where he paused mid-sentence, eyes flickering downward as if swallowing words he wished he could speak. But the most haunting discovery came from a fan who posted a clip from a behind-the-scenes event. In the video, Yu sat quietly in a corner, staring at his phone. Someone off-camera laughed and asked if he was texting his mother. Yu smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. He locked the phone screen quickly and tucked it into his jacket. The fan captioned the video with trembling words. "Was this when it started?" His mother cried when she saw the clip. She went to his room often, sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at the life he left behind. His pillow still smelled faintly like him. His slippers were near the door where he last kicked them off. His books were stacked neatly on his bedside table, including a half-read novel with a bookmark still inside. She ran her fingers over the pages and wondered if he paused at a line that resonated with him. She wondered what thoughts were swirling in his mind as he read, what burdens pressed against his chest as he turned each page. The world outside grew louder, but her world grew quieter. Sometimes she imagined him returning home, exhausted, defeated, but alive. She imagined him walking into the living room and sitting beside her, telling her everything, letting her carry the weight with him. She imagined taking his hands, wiping his tears, telling him he was not responsible for anything he feared. She imagined hugging him so tightly the darkness would melt away. But imagination was the only place he still lived. One evening, just before sunset, she found herself reading the message again. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. "I don't know how to fix it," she whispered into the empty room. "You didn't need to fix anything. You just needed help." Her voice cracked. "And I would have helped you. I would have carried it with you. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" The silence that followed was unbearable. Yet outside her home, something unexpected was happening. A shift, a movement, a rise of voices refusing to let his final words be misinterpreted. Fans began posting long, heartfelt messages defending him, reminding the public of his innocence, his sincerity, his gentle nature. They spoke of the comfort he brought them during their darkest days, the light he gave without asking for anything in return. They refused to let his last message be twisted into guilt. They refused to let rumors taint his memory. They refused to let darkness write the final chapter of his story. Hashtags began climbing the charts. Posters lit candles. Fans gathered in peaceful vigils holding photos of him surrounded by white flowers. They sang the OSTs he once performed. They whispered prayers. They cried quietly in unison. His mother watched videos of these gatherings and felt something shift inside her. Something like warmth, something like gratitude, something like a small piece of healing. Her son may have left the world feeling alone. But he did not leave the world unloved. He had touched far more hearts than he ever realized. And though the message haunted her, it also united millions. His story was no longer just a tragedy. It was a reminder, call for kindness, plea for understanding, a symbol of how fragile a gentle soul can be in a brutal world. And as she finally put the phone down and wiped her tears, she whispered into the quiet, "Your message didn't end you. It saved others."